Welcome back to BourseTV, where we illuminate the success of companies both big and small that have the potential to have a big impact in the marketplace. I'm your host, Rod North. Today, we'll be looking at the ASX listed company Hawk Resources Limited with ASX ticker code HWK. The market cap of Hawk is around 20 million. The company is a critical minerals explorer with a multi-commodity portfolio, with its current focus spanning both scandium and copper. The company's flagship assets include the Olympus Scandium project in Western Australia's West Musgrave region, the Cactus and Meerkat copper projects in Utah and Arizona, and some early-stage lithium projects across Brazil. The main focus in the interview today is on the highly prospective Scandium project in WA and the Cactus and Meerkat copper projects in the US. I would like to give you some background on Scott Caithness, Managing Director of Hawk Resources Limited. Scott brings 40 years of exploration leadership to Hawk Resources with a background that includes senior positions at Rio Tinto and as Exploration Director at Vedanta. He also co-founded and served as Managing Director of Indian Pacific Resources, now ASX-listed Acora Resources. Scott holds a Bachelor of Applied Science in Geology from RMIT University and is a member of the Australian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy and a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Under his leadership, Hawk Resources has advanced its copper exploration program at Cactus while progressing the newly acquired and exciting Olympus Scandium project, a metal Scott has described as offering a genuine large-scale opportunity in a Tier 1 jurisdiction. The company recently completed a capital raising of up to 5.87 million to fund exploration across its Australian and US assets. Scott, welcome back to BourseTV.
Thanks very much, Rod. Great to be here.
Perhaps we might just start with the Scandium project in WA. If you could just tell us a little bit more about Scandium and what Scandium is and
Sure.
how it can benefit our lives, basically.
Okay. All right. Look, Scandium's a rare earth metal. So its prime uses at the moment are in alloying with aluminium, so it makes aluminium a lot lighter and a lot stronger. It's also used in solid oxide fuel cells. It's also going to have a growing use in next generation 5G and 6G networks. So it's a very important metal going forward with new technologies. So in terms of critical applications, the thing that I like the most about it is that it's used in aluminium, which is a bulk commodity. So critical applications in aluminium will be in aerospace, defence and auto going forward. But the thing that's really perhaps giving it a kickstart at the moment is AI data centres and their need for power. So solid oxide fuel cells may well be required, likely will be required for a lot of the data centres because of the huge power demands that they require going forward. So there's a company out of the US called Bloom Energy, which is a consumer of scandium. It produces solid oxide fuel cells. So we've actually recently posted on our website a podcast on scandium called Money of Mine. And it talks a lot about Bloom Energy's requirements going forward. So it talks about global demand for scandium at the moment being around about 75 tonnes. It talks about Bloom Energy itself requiring something like 150 to 200 tonnes of scandium by 2030. So, and that's largely being driven by solid oxide fuel cells for AI data centres. So it's a very important commodity going forward.
So tell us, so where is it produced?
It's primarily around the world produced as byproduct. So Rio Tinto produces a little bit out of its titanium operations in Canada. It's produced a little bit in some of the old Eastern Bloc countries. So Russia produces a bit, but it consumes all of its in defence because it makes its planes lighter, defence planes lighter and stronger with aluminium. So it's basically produced as byproduct. There's no primary producers of scandium in the world at this particular point in time. So there are a couple of projects coming up in New South Wales, one in particular from Sunrise Energy Metals, which is sort of the benchmark at the moment. So that's likely to come into production in the next few years as the first primary producer of scandium in the world.
Okay, so can you tell me about Olympus and why you think it's a high potential project relative to others? And sort of what's the current status of Olympus and when do you expect to be on the ground exploring and what is the program?
Okay, in terms of I mentioned before the benchmark projects are Sunrise Energy Metals. So we typically will try and compare with that project as that project's going forward. So Olympus was explored about 20 years ago. It was explored for copper, nickel, cobalt, PGEs. It's in a mafic, geologically in a mafic, ultramafic geological belt. In the course of that exploration, they collected broad-spaced soil samples, lines typically 1.6 kilometres apart, samples 400 metres apart, where they found something that was interesting for their commodities that they were looking for. They infilled the sampling. All those soil samples they carried out pXRF, so handheld XRF analysis on the soils, and they got scandium was part of the mix of the multi-element suite. So when you put that information together for scandium, there's a 4 kilometre by 7 kilometre scandium in soil anomaly that grades greater than 500 parts per million. The maximum grade is around about 1,200 parts per million. So there are a couple of pockets that are greater than 1,000. And then again, in the course of their exploration, again, not looking for scandium, they did some reconnaissance RAB drilling traverses. So RAB is just chip samples. And what they did with that was those lines were, again, typically 1.6 kilometres apart. The holes were 200 metre apart along section, typically 4 lines in a section. They got intersections of up to 11 metres at 930 parts per million scandium, 5 metres at 948, I think it was, parts per million scandium. So they got a lot of assays, a lot of intervals in holes that got significant scandium. And again, they're assayed by handheld XRF. So basically, you've got 2 generations of work. You've got the soil sampling, and then you've got the follow-up RAB sampling that both have anomalous scandium in them. There were lots of soil samples, and there's lots of sections of drill holes that don't have scandium in them. So our view is that the pXRF work is discriminating. It's showing where there is anomalous scandium. Our future program is to actually recollect the soil samples that were collected in the anomalous zone, exactly the same soil samples, and basically get them to the lab. So that's part of our due diligence. That's the first stage of work that we want to do on the ground. If that proves successful and we get similar sorts of results, then basically we're showing that the pXRF worked, we've got significant scandium, and we would go forward with a much more detailed program as a second follow-up phase with drilling as well to test the targets as we get them. So a very quick program.
But when you're looking at scandium and other comparatives, you know, obviously geology can vary in other minerals like gold and you know, can be nuggety or reef structure or diverse mineralisation. How would you sort of describe the difference in comparatives to, say, Sunrise and what potentially might exist in the WA project where you're looking at Olympus?
Obviously with the work that's done on Olympus, it's much earlier stage than Sunrise, but there's a lot of, let's say, ballpark similarities. So the geological setting, Sunrise's Cysten project started off as a copper nickel cobalt project and was explored for a number of years on the basis of that. So the geology, Sunrise is basically sitting in a mafic complex, intrusive complex. We're sitting in a mafic, ultramafic complex. So similar geology. The Sunrise described their zone of mineralisation, so the overall zone that they've got of mineralisation, as being around about 4.5 kilometres by 4.2 kilometres in terms of area. So I equate that to our soil anomaly. Our soil anomaly is 4 kilometres by 7 kilometres, but earlier stage. The cut-off grade that Sunrise used for their reserve, not for their resource, for their reserve, is 550 parts per million scandium. Our soil anomaly grades greater than 500 parts per million scandium. The cut-off they use for their resource, which is much, much larger than their reserve, is 300 parts per million scandium. So our soil anomaly is significantly larger. And then we've got the RAB drill holes, which have intersections of up to 900 parts per million. So ballpark, albeit we're not quite comparing apples with apples. No. Theirs is obviously much more advanced. It's all lab work. It's all all done. They've got a resource. They've got a reserve. All those sorts of things. We're earlier stage, but we're in the right ballpark, and so we've got a real chance, I think. And as I say, if our verification work proves successful, with lab analysis, then we've potentially got a very, very significant province, potentially a new Scandium province.
And just for our viewers, so they get a context of where things are at, so what are you waiting on now? You're waiting on ministerial approval?
Yeah, I know this has been a source of frustration for shareholders, the amount of time, and investors, the amount of time it's taken. Basically, we've got effectively a native title agreement, an agreement for mineral exploration, they call it, with the traditional owners from the area. We actually managed to get that in about 4 months. So that was a very quick process and very good. We've actually done a cultural heritage survey with traditional owners over the main anomalous area, which covers around about 80 square kilometres, the area we've done it over. So we're just awaiting a report back from the traditional owners on that. So we did that survey in the field, and I was out in the field, and it all appeared to go very well. And then what we've got to get next is we've got to get a mining entry permit, which is granted by the Minister. Consent for that is given by the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. We've had the application in. I understand it's in the Minister's office. So hopefully the approval is not too far away. And then following that, we have to get the Minister for Mines approval for a program of work to be carried out. My understanding is that's a fairly quick process. The mining entry permit is the key thing that we require. So once we've got that, we can get on the ground. You know, we've all our documentation is in. It's all pretty much in order. So we're just waiting.
Just a bit of a waiting game, and it's a pretty exciting position to be in because you're moving through the process relatively quickly by the sound of it too, which is good.
That's right. And look, while we've been waiting, we've been lining up our other ducks. So we've got the organisation that's going to help us with the sampling. They're organised. They know. And they know what the plan is. They know where the samples to be collected. They've been out there before. They understand the process. We've spoken to the laboratory about the analytical work we can get done. We've sort of lined everything up. We've got everybody sort of waiting as we are for this process to happen.
Well, that's very, very exciting. Well, let's just move on to the Cactus copper gold project in Utah and USA. Cactus has been explored by a number of companies since the late 1950s. Why does Hawke still like its potential, and what are the targets?
Yeah, look, I think the key thing that's always attracted Hawke and myself to Cactus is there's significant grade in the exploration that's been done by previous explorers and by Hawke. So, you know, there are multiple drill intersections of 20 metres at between 1% and 2% copper, very close to surface. There's deeper intersections. We had the project farmed out to Rio Tinto for a little while there, and they drilled a hole at Cactus into the same sorts of targets that we're looking at now, but they drilled a hole where their intersection started at around about 250, 300 metres below surface, 42 metres at 1.9% copper and 0.6 grams per tonne gold, sitting within a 70 metre zone of 1.1 copper and 0.3 gold. So there's some good grade.
Yes.
And you know, everybody knows if you've got great grade, then that solves a lot of your problems as you go forward with mining. So what we've identified is we've got a zone that stretches from the historical Comet mine through the Cactus mine up to the New Year's mine. So there are 3 separate mines along this northwest trend. It goes for about 1 kilometre, the entire trend. Most of the work, virtually all of it, has been done Cactus, a little bit at Comet, and a very small amount at New Year's at the other end. And there's some gaps in the drilling. So what we're doing at the moment is we're drilling across that zone. We're trying to work out how wide that zone is and also what the grade is near surface, because there is potential that we could have some open pittable mineralisation going forward, and then maybe it goes underground after a period of time. I mean, we've got the possibility of both. With the 1.5% copper grades, obviously that's mineable open pit with the current copper price, but also if you've got near surface copper, then the 1.5% is mineable underground. And if you've got near surface, then you've got potential for an open pit starter going forward. So we're drilling that at the moment. We completed a program in April this year, and we got some encouraging near surface results out of that. That was drilled right at one end of the Cactus deposit, and we got 80 metre intersections at around about 0.5% copper. We got some significant molybdenum zones intersected down those holes. And importantly, the zone of mineralisation looks like it's somewhere between 35 and 50 metres wide, but we only drilled 3 holes from the one pad. So we're going along about 550 metres of strike between Cactus Mine and Comet Mine, and we're drilling across every 50 metres to see what we get at surface. So,
that drilling's underway at the moment?
That drilling's underway. That drilling started about 2 weeks ago,
right.
A week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. We should start to get assay results back through the laboratory, I think in September. But obviously, as we go through the drilling program, I'll put out releases and just advise, and we'll get pXRF done on the core to verify if we've got copper mineralisation, similar to what we did in the initial program that we completed in April.
And you're going to be heading over soon to look at the project, and tell us a bit about what you'll be doing when you're there.
Yeah, look, I'll be going across on Thursday. Obviously going down to Cactus to have a look at the drilling that's going on there. And obviously, if we've got some nice mineralisation, obviously I'll be getting a few photographs and seeing what the pXRF readings are. And then I'll be heading across to Merkat to have a look at our new copper project that we picked up a few months back, which is the Merkat copper project.
So just talking about the copper project there in Arizona, can you tell us why Hawke picked that up as a copper project in Arizona a few months ago, and what the plan is for this project?
Yeah, it's a little bit like the Scandium. The Scandium we saw as being a really good opportunity. We looked at the data and thought, hey, this is really interesting. Let's pick this up. Merkat was a little bit the same. It's basically, it's in a fantastic belt of rocks that's got world-class porphyry copper deposits. So, it's in the right belt of rocks. It has some historical copper mines on it. There was the Santo Nino mine was explored was mined between 1912 and about 1955. Reported grades mined were 7 to 8% copper and up to 1% molybdenum, so very, very high grade. Mined supposedly from a dike. But interestingly, that area sits within a 1.2 kilometre diameter magnetic anomaly, which is actually a classic magnetic anomaly for a porphyry copper deposit. We can't find any evidence of exploration that's post-mining. So there's been no recent exploration. This magnetic anomaly was really only identified in a drone magnetic survey that was done about 18 months, 2 years ago by the vendors of the project. So we see that as just being a classic it's a classic geophysical signature for a porphyry. It's got a historical copper mine sitting partially within that magnetic anomaly. It's in a belt of rocks that's got world-class porphyry copper deposits. There is some old mines on the southeastern side of the project area, which are basically around breccia pipes, which often can be associated with porphyries as well, or porphyry belts. And there are grades, rock chip sample grades that have been collected there historically that go sort of percent plus grades as well. So right belt of rocks, good indications at surface, historical mining.
So sort of high prospectivity there too. And the good thing is you've really, as an exploration company, you sort of want to have a couple of opportunities and projects, and you've got two outstanding ones from what you've just described, which is great, with obviously the Scandium and with these projects as well in the US. So I think that gives you a bit of diversification as well. So if you're a shareholder, I think that's a good thing, because you've got two opportunities to see those things eventuate and materialise over time. Yeah,
look, I think it's good to have a couple of strings to your bow. Rather than putting all your eggs in one basket. I mean, exploration is a high risk business, and while we have all geologists think that their projects are great, and they get enthusiastic about them, and they'll have good indications that. But the reality is that only a handful of those will come to fruition as being economic deposits. So I think it's good for the company to have a couple of options up its sleeve, and of course we've got diversified commodity, but both critical commodities going forward. I mean, copper underpins the global trend for electrification, and Scandium is certainly a great growth commodity going forward, a high value growth commodity, small volume, large value. So, a great opportunity. Sounds like a really good strategy. Just finally, Hawke has a solid portfolio of copper projects in the US and Olympus Scandium in Australia, and of course, some early stage lithium projects in Brazil. So tell us
what Hawk's focus will be over the remainder of this quarter and into the fourth quarter of 2026. What do you see as the key things you want to achieve and what objectives you're setting yourself?
Yeah, look, I think probably in terms of our focus, obviously we're drilling in the US at the moment, so the copper. But I think if we get good results on the Scandium could easily become the priority for the company going forward. Yep. We've sort of got almost like in a nice situation if you've got two competing projects really. But I think the real value in the short term is probably the Scandium once we get access to that. The other thing that's important about the Scandium is it's relatively cheap exploration. That mineralisation is sitting in the top 20 metres, and so we could actually progress the exploration very, very rapidly at the Scandium. The copper will require a little bit more work.
So tell us a bit about what existing infrastructure's there, as things develop with the Scandium, how easy and accessible will it be? Because our viewers can see behind you, there's some maps which show where it is. Yep. And that's really important that people understand where it is in northern WA as well. But you've got a bit of infrastructure around you there, haven't you?
Yeah, look, access is actually quite easy. So I've been there a couple of times now. So basically fly into Yulara. You drive along the Great Central Highway. Warracoona Roadhouse is there, which is what we've stayed in, which is only a small roadhouse at this particular point in time. And then it's a 50k drive down the Great Central Highway again, and then it's about 10 k's in on a track. So it's actually very accessible. There's fibre optic cable along the Great Central Highway, and actually the Great Central Highway is about to be sealed. Right.
Ticks a lot of boxes for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's not difficult to get to. And I think the important thing that people, again, don't necessarily realise with Scandium is it's not a big volume commodity. So we refer to Sunrise Energy Metals. They've done a feasibility study. They're going to produce 60 tonnes of material. So to put in perspective, 60 tonnes of material probably sits in the back of about 20 Land Cruiser utes.
Is that right?
So it's not a big volume.
Yeah, understand that.
These are not big operations.
Yep. Yes.
The total reserve for Sunrise is 2 million tonnes.
Right.
And so and they're going to mine that over a 20-year period.
And Scandium's much more easily mineable, compared to what people would be familiar with gold and other commodities, which often you've got to remove an enormous amount of ore to find gold.
It's more akin to a bauxite deposit or something like that. Fairly shallow pits. Yes. Not very deep, maybe 10, 20 metres. And then, not large volume as well. Yes. So you're talking about quarry size mines that we would associate with a quarry, rather than, we're not talking about huge scale bulk mining propositions where you need railways or anything like that to transport your materials. So in terms of volume of material, probably more akin to gold or something like that, gold or silver or a precious metal. So you don't need a lot of infrastructure. You don't need a large workforce. It's all fairly compact.
Well, that's been very enlightening, and it's been a pleasure to have Scott back on BourseTV. In particular, I'm sure our BourseTV viewers will look forward with great interest to hearing more about how the Olympus Scandium project in WA develops over coming months and then reaches the other exploration milestones. It's certainly a very exciting prospect for Hawk Resources with significant company-making potential. Thank you for watching BourseTV. If you would like further information on Hawk Resources, you can visit their website at www.hawkresources.com.au, and the ticker code is HWK. Thanks very much, Scott, for joining us again on BourseTV.
Thanks very much for having me, Rod.